Hello to everyone on TVBS. We are actually very proud to have Anduril CEO and founder Palmer Luckey with us on set today in Taiwan. Say hi to the camera for us.
Hi everybody, thank you for having me.
Thank you. So to begin with, could you share about your trip to Taiwan this time?
No, it's been great. I mean, we've been here mostly for our work with the military, but also meeting with a lot of suppliers that we already work with, meeting with some new suppliers as well. Anduril has increased our work with Taiwanese suppliers by about 15 times over the last 2 years. So we have a lot of components that are made in Taiwan. We have a lot of assemblies that are being produced here as well. So I've got a lot of friends to say hi to.
How much opportunities do you think it's in Taiwan for Anduril?
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunities. One, on the side of working, obviously, with the military, but also Taiwan is one of the most technologically advanced countries in the world. It's one that's deeply aligned with U.S. Policy interests. It's one that's deeply aligned with our technology interests. The United States economy wouldn't work without Taiwan. And so I think the areas of collaboration are kind of endless, from semiconductors to sensors to optics to precision metallics. Even to certain technologies, I won't say exactly what they are because I don't want my competition to find out. But there's certain things that you can only buy in Taiwan, certain advanced technologies that don't even exist in the United States or anywhere else. And so I want to leverage those advantages to make better products.
You made the headlines last year because you actually came to personally meet with the Minister of National Defense, Wang Sung-Koo, where Altius drones were actually delivered. But there's been some debates in Taiwan over the past few months about the Altius drones capabilities, because we actually have seen its performance, both good and both bad on the front lines.
I've been following it very, very closely, and I follow the Taiwan press about our company very, very closely. To be honest, it's been a little frustrating because a lot of the press that I'm seeing, they're referencing problems with Altius that did exist when it was first deployed in Ukraine years ago. And I mean, I'll admit, it wasn't just Anduril, it was really most US munitions when they actually went toe-to-toe with Russian jamming systems, Russian electronic warfare systems, had problems with navigation, we had problems with communication. The difference between us and a lot of other companies is that we stayed in Ukraine and fixed those problems. So we were in Ukraine the second week of the war. We were there continuously with people, hardware, and software updates. We figured out how to break the Russian electronic warfare. We figured out how to make navigation work completely without GPS. And Altius, the product, is very different today from Altius of 3 or 4 years ago when it first started running into these challenges. And so people have said, there were these challenges in Ukraine. Those were real challenges. But there's a reason that Ukraine continues to buy them, that the US continues to send them as part of US aid packages, that countries like the United Kingdom have continued to send. We actually just sent our last truckload of Altius, which was strongly requested by Ukraine last fall. So we're still sending large numbers of these, and we're responsible for destroying. Altius specifically is responsible for destroying hundreds of millions of dollars in Russian hardware. So I'm very proud of its performance. And so, of course, you can see where it's frustrating where I read, there's been reports that it has problems in combat. And I'll say, if those problems still existed, Ukraine wouldn't be buying them, they wouldn't be requesting them, the United States Army wouldn't be doubling down on its investment in Altius either.
So what I'm trying to say is that in the latest FMS to Taiwan, Altius 600 and 700 is part of the package too. So what I'm trying to say is that Altius is not only going to sell this to those to Taiwan, but you guys are going to be here to ensure that they function.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay. Because I mean, when we look at Taiwanese capabilities, we actually, in a very recent debate in Taiwan is what's the percentage of domestic drones and also foreign drones? Do you have a perfect number in mind?
I mean, I think the perfect number would be that Taiwan is able to make everything that it needs on island using on island resources, because you might end up in a situation where you're not able to have continuous resupply. You look at Ukraine, it's very different. With Ukraine, we can continue to resupply them through Europe continuously through a war, even through an invasion scenario. That might not be the case with Taiwan. And so I think it's actually even more important for things to be built natively in Taiwan. Now, we're actually working on doing more of that. I want to be able to manufacture Anduril systems in country in Taiwan, not just for Taiwan, but even to the level of having enough production capacity to sell back into the United States, back into other countries as an export partner. political reality has changed over the last few years. I think in the past, the US position was buy from us, buy from us, buy from us, don't make your own things. The US has so much need and so much demand and is so far behind on deliveries of weapons to partners. I mean, what's the average delay, I think, between, I think FMS typically takes 7 years from US to Taiwan. We need more partners just to help us meet the demand in general. And so I think the new view in the US is build in the US, build in the US, build in the US, and build in all of these partner countries, and try to build as much as we can.
So you mentioned about investing in Taiwan and manufacturing in Taiwan. And meeting with Taiwanese partners this time to see how is that viable. I mean, not only setting up an office, but having a manufacturing factories in Taiwan.
Well, the majority of the hiring that we're doing in Taiwan is engineers. So it's not like salespeople or office managers. It's primarily engineers who are doing designing and manufacturing and real technical work. I think that we have a small presence here. Mostly we've been working with contract manufacturers that are based in Taiwan, component companies that are based in Taiwan, machining companies that are based in Taiwan. I want to have a much larger manufacturing presence in Taiwan. We haven't been able to find the perfect thing to justify that yet. So, for example, we have a facility in the United States called Arsenal One that is almost 1 million square meters. It's a huge facility. We have not found the right thing to build a similar thing here, like like an Arsenal T. We've not gotten quite there yet, but I'm feeling very optimistic about it, and it's something I would love to do. Would be integrate Anduril with Taiwan native production capacity and make enough of all of these drones, not just for Taiwan, but also for export.
What would be the perfect incentive for you to do that in Taiwan?
It just has to be that the government is procuring something that can justify that level of scale. We're willing to invest huge amounts of our own money. Like with Arsenal One, the government didn't pay us to build that factory. We spent $900 million US of our own money building that factory before we even had the contract for the thing that it is now building. And so we're willing to invest huge amounts of money, billions of dollars US, if we have the right way to actually make use of it. In other words, my investors won't let me spend $1 billion on a factory that sits empty. But if I can keep it busy, they're happy to let me invest.
I want to move on to your partnerships with ANSYS. Especially the underwater drone that they actually display to the media and also to the U.S. senators and congressmen when they visit. It is a very nice image of this big orange drone, and people in Taiwan were actually very enthralled and interested in that. So could you actually share with us more about your partnership with ANSYS, including that drone?
Well, we've had a very good relationship with ANSYS over the last few years. And in fact, a lot of the relationships that we have with other commercial vendors, commercial partners, and manufacturing and component partners actually came through ANSYS because they have this deep relationship with Taiwan industry. And in particular, vendors who are building things without dependence on PRC supply chain, which is very critical for arms items. So we've continued to work with them, not just on that, but also a variety of commercial applications of our technology. A lot of people think of Anduril just as a military company, but we actually build things like underwater systems for subsea inspection, for oil and gas, for subsea infrastructure maintenance, repair, and monitoring. And they've been a great partner with that.
One criticism that ANSYS sometimes receives in Taiwan is regarding how good their system is. And I'm just very curious, how does Anduril feels working with them? What you guys actually talk about in terms of knowledge sharing?
I mean, I have nothing. I have no criticisms. I've had a great time with all the people. I mean, obviously, I can't speak for every criticism everyone may have had of an organization. People have made pretty good criticisms of my organization, us, and sometimes things go wrong. But in general, we've had a great relationship with ANSYS. So I've not run into any problems where their stuff's not working or where they're idiots. They're sharp guys.
Do you have any more interesting projects that you can actually preempt us on your books of ANSYS? Sorry.
It's probably inappropriate for me to say before anything is too real. I always try to keep things very, very real. I like to talk about things that are definitely happening, really moving forward. Otherwise, people think I'm a dreamer with my head in the clouds. But I think that a big opportunity is going to be products that are built with combination Taiwan and U.S. supply chain for government agencies that cannot depend on products that use PRC supply chain. So for example, don't even think weapons. Think things that are maybe a little more boring to the average person. Think about your Wi-Fi router or your TV or your laptop computer. There's opportunities for us to build a parallel supply chain that is good for the US and good for Taiwan, deepens the relationship, and makes it so that the US and Taiwan are not dependent on PRC supply chain. And I think that's good in a kind of a wartime scenario, but it's especially good in a pre-war scenario because it means that everyone knows we're not as dependent on them, right? It gives more room for diplomatic levers to be used when they know that China doesn't have the ability to, hypothetically, turn off the supply of all computers or phones to the United States. So I think I know that's a big picture thing, but I'm working on specific items in that area, and I think it's going to take close collaboration between agencies like NCIST, Taiwan, the US, and companies like Anduril to make this happen.
I just want to move on to the idea when you talk about the supply chain, what we in Taiwan call the non-red supply chain.
Yeah.
Meaning
exactly.
Yeah.
I want to apply the idea of non-red supply chain, not just to weapons, which is where everybody really talks about it. Also, even drones, they understand the security risks. So they say, non-red supply chain for drones. I want to see non-red supply chain for all of the essentials of everyday life, all of the things that we need to maintain our quality of life on a day-to-day basis. And maybe that results in price increases. Maybe that results in certain capabilities not being quite as good. I mean, China has a really powerful manufacturing machine, but I think it's good for the world for non-red options to exist across all critical items, not just weapons.
Do you believe that non-red supply chain is going to continue to be an issue or something that is still very, I would say, appealing to the people in DC?
I think it will be an enduring issue, and it's across all political parties. The libertarians believe in this. The Green Party believes in this. The Democrats believe in this. The Republicans. So the large parties and the small parties. There's nobody who thinks that we need to have more dependence on China because they know that we're giving them leverage in this case. It's easier for them to negotiate with the United States and get their way when, if we don't do what they want, they could basically shut off a lot of our critical industry and shut off a lot of our critical supply chain. Not just for computers. Think about things like cars. A lot of automotive manufacturing happens in the US, but it's based on red supply chain. And so there's a strong push to get away from red supply chain. I think that will be an enduring issue for the next 10, 20, 30 years.
If Taiwan were to face a blockade rather than invasion, what role would autonomous systems play?
Well, autonomous systems are useful because they allow small numbers of people to usefully leverage large numbers of robots and sensors and systems. If you have a 1-to-1 ratio, there's only so many sensors you can use. There's only so many systems that you can use. Autonomy allows one person to control many of these systems. And so whether it's a war scenario or a blockade scenario, that's valuable. Another reason that autonomy is important is because it makes it much harder for your enemy to stop you. In the past, with things like remotely operated systems, so still unmanned, but with a remote control, your enemy just needs to break your radio link. If they can jam your link or destroy your radio transmitters, they can make all your systems stop working. With autonomy, I can have something that flies long ranges to either gather data or strike a target, even if they jam the radio link. This is an example of one of the things that we learned in Ukraine. Earlier in the war, things like Altius were much more dependent on a human actually maintaining a radio link, so they could do things like see a target, select it, push a button, and have it destroy it. We had to make them autonomous to get around that because of these early war failures that we had against Russian and actually Chinese-supplied Russian electronic warfare equipment. The only way around it was to build autonomous systems that don't need a radio link. They can go there, find the target. For example, let's say a jammer truck or a missile attack system. Find it and destroy it, even with no radio link at long range. So autonomy is critical because if you don't have autonomy, you are relying on these very weak chains of command and control.
I have been to one of the military bases in Taiwan where they actually showcase how they train for Altius system, and I was very impressed. Basically,
thank you. I'm glad to hear it.
By how it was like you mentioned. The
military personnel, they've been training a lot with it, so they've gotten very, very good at moving it around, loading it, launching it, striking with.
The thing right now is that in Taiwan we still don't have that autonomous system, and what speed we need to work on that.
I think very quickly, if you look at what happened when Ukraine was invaded by Russia at large scale, you can look at the first 6 months of failures of non-autonomous systems as basically the same challenges that Taiwan would likely face. I really strongly believe that in the modern world, with modern jamming equipment, hacking equipment, cyber spoofing, I strongly believe that you cannot rely on systems that do not have some level of autonomy. So I think it's a critical priority, and luckily there's a lot of people in the ministry who agree with me. I think these things will actually make it into the military at scale.
When you look at PRC and Russia in terms of their scaling up also equally in autonomous system, how much time does be it Taiwan or the US side have? Because I mean, when we talk about competition, it is not only in terms of trade, but especially also in the military field.
That's right. Well, I mean, in some areas, Taiwan has a massive lead over the United States. For example, the semiconductors that make all of these autonomy projects possible. I wouldn't be able to make my autonomous drones without Taiwan. And I think that Taiwan has a very strong advantage there. In fact, a strong advantage even over PRC. They don't have the same semiconductor capability, and so as a result, they don't have the same autonomy possibilities. If I were Taiwan, I would want to maximally leverage that opportunity.
So you still see potential in Taiwan developing autonomous system and might have an edge over China? I
think that Taiwan as a nation has the strongest edge of any nation on building autonomous systems if it wants to. There's no nation in the world that could do a better job. Not the US, not Japan, not Korea. Taiwan is in a position where it has the things that make advanced autonomy possible. And I'm not saying that these other countries can't make things. I'm making things in those countries. But yeah, Taiwan has a uniquely strong opportunity to outperform China, stay ahead of China, and to have much more powerful autonomous systems in them. And also I will note that I think that Taiwan has a very limited problem that they need to set. And without getting into all the details, there's only a handful of scenarios that Taiwan needs to focus on preventing. If I were China, I would be very concerned about the ability of Taiwan to use autonomy to do large-scale weapons system deployments that make China's ambitions impossible. In other words, if I could abandon all of my principles and abandon all of my national allegiances. And I was thinking just purely as an engineer, would I rather have to solve the Chinese problem or the Taiwan problem? I would much rather be solving the Taiwan problem. I think that you guys I think you have a much better foundation to win.
So you talk about solving a Taiwan problem, meaning it's more like, Taiwan has an edge in terms of technology.
It has an edge in terms of technology, and the edge that you have with your technology is exactly what you need to stop China from threatening Taiwan. It is a perfect fit as long as it's actually put into action and the scale of production is significant enough.
I want to move into your vision in terms of counter-drone warfare, because every drone creates a counter-drone race. So will the future wars be defined more by drones or anti-drone systems?
Everything is a drone, is basically the end state of this. People a few years back would talk about drones as, like a quadcopter, a DJI, and they go bzzz. Yeah. The reality is we have drone boats, and we have drone aircraft, and we have drone ground vehicles and drone tanks. And it is going to be so much cheaper and better and faster and fewer lives at risk to have all of these systems be drones than it is to have them be manned. And so as a result, it's almost inevitable. It is a certainty that people will want to have aircraft that can be used without putting human lives at risk. They will want aerial drones, sea drones, undersea drones that can take risks that would be irresponsible to ask a person to take. And because of that, drones are going to massively outperform the combat ability of manned systems. And so I strongly believe that as a matter of practicality everything will be autonomous, everything will be a drone.
Okay, I'm going to wrap up a hard questions here. Is there anything that you want to add on to the hard parts we are talking about?
So first, I'm here at Computex. It's the first time I've ever been, but I'm very excited because I love large technology trade shows. The US equivalent is CES, the Consumer Electronics Show. I've been going to CES. Have you ever been?
I haven't, but
Gotcha. I've been going since I was 15 years old. I actually used a fake ID to go the first 2 years because you have to be 18 to attend. So I'm very much looking forward to Computex. I guess the last thing I'll say, we talked earlier about how sometimes I'll read Taiwan media coverage or media coverage from anywhere and I'll be disappointed. And I'll say, oh, they're missing the big picture. Something I've seen in a few Taiwan media outlets is they say, oh, Palmer is a warmonger. He wants war with China because he'll make more money. You can't trust what he says with regard to Taiwan because he wants there to be war. And I kind of want to address that because I think a lot of people don't understand the perspective of someone like me. They say, well, of course Palmer says that that we need to manufacture more weapons. He's in the business of manufacturing more weapons. They don't consider that maybe the reason I'm in the business of manufacturing weapons is because I already believed that we needed more weapons to counter China. I'm in this area because I believe this problem. But more importantly, some people say, Palmer wants war because he'll make more money. One, I already have so much money. I have more money than I have any idea what to do with. It would be crazy for me to want war because I would get even more money. But more importantly, most of my net worth, my money, is not actually in Anduril. It's actually tied up. I made a lot of money from Oculus. I've invested in lots of other companies. Most of my wealth is actually tied up in basically all of these non-weapons companies. And then all my investors, the people who give me money, their money is all tied up in all these other companies. We actually make more money when the world remains stable and trade continues and there's not some kind of World War III. The least profitable thing for me and every other billionaire in the entire United States would be a large-scale war with China. And so I kind of want to give this perspective because I think people often don't quite understand. The so-called elites in the US, they're not promoting weapons technology because they want war. They're promoting weapons technology because they desperately want peace, if only to maintain the value of their investments in all of these. Think about Apple. Apple's a market cap of $3 trillion. What do you think their market cap is going to be if World War III starts and they're not able to use chips from Taiwan and they're not able to make phones in China? Their whole business will fall apart. They'll lose trillions of dollars in market cap. And so I guess the last thing I'll say here is, Taiwanese people who think that people in the US see Taiwan as some kind of pawn in an attempt to start a war, I assure you, the rich and powerful in the US want nothing more than continued stability in Taiwan. It is really the reason they're investing in companies like Anduril is to try and maintain that stability to the greatest extent they can. So, an interesting topic that I thought I would throw out there.
Yeah. So trying to say it's not only maintaining values, but also maintaining basically peace in the world to ensure prosperity.
Peace is very profitable. The most profitable thing in the modern world is peace and maintaining our modern globalized economy. And if someone said Palmer wants war because he's just an insane psycho, that would be maybe a more reasonable critique. It's not true. But the idea that I would want war because it's profitable misses the truth of how the world economy works.
So it misses the entire point.
It misses the entire point. So that would be my recommendation to the conspiracy theorists globally and in Taiwan. If you're going to say that I'm actually secretly trying to make war happen, you should abandon the theory that it's because it will make me money and say that it's just because I'm a crazy person.
I'll just end this interview. Do you have anything that you want to speak to your fan base in Taiwan? Apparently you have one here.
I appreciate all of the support. I have a lot of Taiwan fans and followers on social media, and I really appreciate their support. I think that one of the things that I've noticed about people in Taiwan, and there's a recognition by people of these problems that comes by living under a sense of threat that you don't get in other countries. And you see this in I think people in Ukraine, they have this common feeling. They understand that these are not hypotheticals. You do need tools to defend yourself. I think people in Israel often feel the same way. I think people in certain Middle Eastern nations feel the same way. And then you contrast that, for example, with a lot of people in the US, and because we don't really feel threatened, it's a lot easier to say, oh, well, we don't need the military, we don't need tools to defend ourselves. So the thing I really appreciate about my fans in Taiwan is they're people who understand what we're doing, they understand why we're doing it, and they understand the importance of the work. So thank you fans. I'm a fan of you as well.
Thank you so much for sticking to TVBS in Taiwan.
No, thank you. This has been fantastic.
Thank you.